What's good, Wizards fans? It's your host, Real Ed Oliver and Brandon Scott. Today we have on special guests from the Locked On Pistons, Cougar Hill. We're going to talk about the trade. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Wizards, your daily Washington Wizards podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Wizards your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. And today we are going to recap the trade between the Washington Wizards and the Detroit Pistons. The Washington Wizards traded Mike Muscala and Danilo Gallinari to the Detroit Pistons for Marvin Bagley, Isaiah Livers, and 2 second-round picks. So we do have special guests on Cougar Hill from the Locked On Pistons. How you feeling today, man? We just played each other the other day. Kuzma said, "Don't be that team," and we ended up being that team. How you feeling today?
And I'm feeling straight, man. Like I told you guys before we started recording, you guys have the excuse built in, just like the Raptors, that the only time the Pistons were able to beat you is when there was a trade that involved losing some of the players on your roster the day before. So you guys can use that excuse. Those are the only two wins the Pistons have. The Raptors, they made that trade with OG Anunoby, didn't have half the rotation. I know Gallinari and Muscala wasn't playing much, but still, you guys can use the same excuse. It works.
Yeah, we'll take it. Locked On. If you're watching on YouTube, they have a belt emoji or a graphic on here now. So we're kind of fighting for that belt for the first pick of the draft. So we'll see who gets that one. But just recapping the trade between us, what was your initial reaction to the trade?
So I didn't see the trade till like an hour and a half until after it happened. I was asleep when the news broke. So I woke up to a bunch of mentions saying, "Hey, the Pistons finally made a move because, you know, you're one of the worst teams in NBA history and you haven't done anything. You'd expect a move to happen by then, but nothing happened until this past week. I actually floated out the idea of the Pistons going after Gallinari a few weeks ago. I believe in early December. Just another guy who's like 6'10", hypothetically can shoot. He's been a good shooter throughout his whole career. I know he hasn't shot the ball very well at all this year. But it's a guy who's 6'10", can play the 4 position, hopefully, and soak up some minutes and provide spacing, which is, you know, the Pistons are an awful basketball team right now. And all they need, not all they need, but one of the main things they need is just taller dudes that can shoot the basketball. Like that's one of the things they need. And he at least does that. So that was my immediate reaction. Like, oh, I actually thought Gallinari was someone maybe they could get for cheap a few weeks ago. So I wonder what he's able to do here. If he's able to play at all, like 15 minutes. I don't know how, you know, he's getting up there in age, coming off that bad injury last year. So I don't know how much he really has left, if at all. But it has to be better than some of the things the Pistons have been able to put out there. The other takeaway I had immediately was the fact that the Pistons had to attach a few seconds to Marvin Bagley's contract to get off of it. I had been told for the last few months, going all the way back to the offseason, that they had been trying to move Marvin Bagley, but they just haven't been able to because of his contract. So I figured that they were going to eventually have to attach something to him to move off of him. So I wasn't shocked to see the 2 second-round picks, really. Just interesting to see that they actually did it. And then my last quick thought was just they went after 2 more expiring contracts, freeing up salary cap for them, and it looks like they might be trying to use these expiring contracts and long-term salary cap to really try to make a move before the deadline. So that was my quick thoughts on it, really.
Definitely, yeah. The fact that you guys had to give up 2 second-round picks to move on from Bagley was, you know, a huge takeaway for sure. But it could be, you know, something like a bigger move. You know, now you guys are projected to have about $64 million in cap space, so it could be a move, you know, setting the table for, you know, free agency next year to bring somebody else in, a veteran, to help you guys out for sure. But if you had to say, like, because, you know, people always want to say, you know, somebody won the trade. Before we get to the scouting report for Bagley and Isaiah Livers, if you had to say which team do you think made out better than the other, if you had to pick a side, who do you think made out better?
Oh, I definitely think the Wizards won this trade. I think the Pistons were desperate. I think the Pistons were they had been, like I said, they had been trying to move off of Bagley for months now. So whatever trade they ended up doing that involved giving up assets with him just to get off his contract, they were going to lose because they didn't have to sign him. They traded for him by giving up a rotation player and Trey Lyles to the Kings, who plays a lot of minutes for them now, along with a second round pick. So they already gave up assets to get him. They then extended him immediately after to an overpaid contract, and now you have to give up a few more second round picks just to get off a said contract. So terrible asset management by the Detroit Pistons. So whatever move they did involving Bagley was going to be a loss for them. But if you just ignore the contract of Marvin Bagley, he was one of the few players on the Pistons that I thought actually looked like he was finding a role in the NBA this year. I don't think he's going to be a star ever. I don't think he's ever going to be a starter in the NBA, but he's found his role as a guy who can come off the bench, 15 to 20 minutes, score buckets, play his role. He's not going to try to do too much with the ball in his hands. He's an immediate bucket. He's very efficient around the basket. He's going to dunk everything around the basket. He's really good offensive rebound. He's going to put back a lot of shots. He's going to be a really good lob threat for wherever he plays. And when you do give him some touches to attack closeouts or drive off the perimeter or go to the basket, he scores pretty efficiently. So he was finding his role as a guy. Look, he knows that he's not that great of a defender, but he improved a little bit this year. It's still not a good one. And then cut down some of the usage offensively. It just bought completely into his role, and he was actually being impactful in his minutes. And he was definitely the Pistons' best backup five at the moment. So just the player himself, the Wizards got the best player in the deal. Bagley he's not a great player, but he's fine. He's going to be a good role player for whoever he plays with. I think he's probably going to be a backup five for a long time in the NBA. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to hit my mic just now, everybody. But yeah, I think the Wizards made out because of that. They also got 2 second-round picks for a player that, again, is going to be, plays a role and will be impactful in his minutes. Got 2 second-round picks for him. Don't know your guys' salary cap sheet like that, really, so I don't know how much that impacts you guys and how much, if that's a big deal or not, his $13 million. But the other player in Isaiah Livers is a player that I was pretty high on entering into this year. Now, he's been horrible this year. He was injured to start the year, just got back like 2-3 weeks ago, and hasn't played very well since then. But he's a very prototypical 3-and-D player. Last year for the Pistons, his first 2 years in the league, was shooting well from deep, played the right way, was a very smart player. He's a smart team defender, knows how to play the game. At least his first 2 years would make the right pass. He's gonna play the right way offensively. He's gonna take shots when they're there. If not, he's gonna keep the ball moving. I think this year the situation kind of hurt him a lot in Detroit. I still think he has that NBA future of just a 3-and-D player because of his IQ and his ability to, play team defense, sneaky athleticism on defense, and also just his ability to shoot the basketball. So hypothetically, the Wizards get the 2 best players if they're at their, what you expect them to be. I don't think Livers is this bad of a basketball player. I think he's just playing really bad to have this year. I wouldn't be shocked at all to see if the if the Wizards got a nice player in Livers long term. So, and the Pistons basically made this deal for expiring contracts. So, yeah, I think the Wizards definitely won this deal.
100%. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, we understand why the Pistons made it. You perfectly explained it, to get off Bagley's contract and free up cap space coming up for next year just to get off the contract. Gallo Muscala, I mean, they're expiring deals. So, I mean, you're not looking – you may play him a little bit here and there just to space the floor. But, me and Brandon joke around about Gallo. He's on his last leg in his career. He can barely move. He's kind of a turnstile on defense. He can barely move his feet. We joke about him, AARP and having a cane out there sometimes on defense. And Muscala, he can shoot the 3. But if I had to say who won the trade, it's not like a trade kind of you're looking at like, oh, who won, honestly. But I think both teams kind of did what they wanted to do or what they planned to do in this trade. The Wizards just getting 2 second-round picks and two players who have upside was a huge win for the Wizards because Gallo and Muscala, they were certainly buyout candidates, in my opinion. Just, watch these guys play. So just to get something for them was a win. But we're going to get to a quick break, and then we're going to get to Brandon's question. And before we do that, we have a quick word about eBay Motors. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only, available to U.S. customers. Also, make sure you guys check out the Locked On Sports National YouTube. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel.
Yes, sir. So we're going to talk about Marvin Bagley III real quick. We kind of touch base a little bit about him. Coming from a Pistons standpoint, and you probably ask the same from a Kings fan, but are you ready to call him a bust? Or do you think that the bar was way too high for him? And, people expected a lot out of him. Is he more of a role guy? So are you ready to call him a bust, or he's just the ceiling is way too high for him?
So I don't like calling players bust. I don't like doing it because, these guys, like especially Marvin Bagley, which you guys are going to probably learn quickly. He's a very good dude, very, very good teammate. Great guy off the floor, does a lot in the community. He did a lot in the Pistons community. So he is a great dude. He's going to be a great teammate. But just moving all that to the side, if you want to talk about what's like a bust in in those terms, like he's not Kwame Brown. Like he's not unplayable. Like he should be a role player in the NBA for a long time. Like he's not going to be, I don't think he's going to be out the NBA anytime soon. Like he's a really good offensive player, a really, really good scorer, really good lob threat, has really nice hands, can score in isolation, can score in the post. Like he has really good offensive skill. And even it didn't happen a lot, but he did flash a little bit, I thought, of improvement as a passer when defenses, collapsed on him a little bit inside. Now, I wouldn't call him a good passer at all, but I think he is like a better passer this year than he was last year. And again, he's just a guy who I thought was drafted too high for his position. He shouldn't have been drafted where he was drafted. Although if you talk to some draft people, I think he was a good prospect. I think him as a prospect, he was a pretty high prospect. Now, should he have went above Luka, Trey? Probably not. But like him as a prospect, I don't think it was too crazy to see him go high in the draft. He had an unfortunate situation in Sacramento. He had a lot of injuries to start his career. And I think that hindered a lot of his development. Like I know a lot of people thought coming to the NBA, he was going to be able to expand his range. I think I listened to, or I saw a quote from your guys' head coach that, hey, we think he can expand his range out to the 3-point line. That was something the Pistons thought maybe too, but it just hasn't been something he's been able to develop to his game. So I wouldn't call him a bust because he's a role player. He can play in the NBA. He's going to be in the NBA for a minute. And I think you guys are going to like him. He's not a great defender. You're probably going to witness him give up stuff defensively, even though I do think he got a little better as well in drop coverage defensively. I also think that he's a decent rebounder, but when he's a good rebounder for his role, but when you have him as like the only five out there, like when he's the only big man and you're asking him to, cover for everybody else when they're weak defenders or weak rebounders, it's going to pop that he's not, a good enough rebounder for that. But offensively, man, I think you guys are going to really like him. He's a really good role threat. He sets good screens. He knows how to slip. Actually, let me not say he sets good screens. He knows how to set screens at the right angle to really open up some lanes. He doesn't hit people very often, but he knows how to slip at the right time. He knows how to create an angle to get the ball handler some space to find him on the roll. And again, he has a really good offensive skill set. So, no, I wouldn't call him a bust, and I think you guys are probably going to like him a little bit. If you just look past his contract, I think you guys probably will like him.
Yeah. I wouldn't say, sorry to cut you off, Brandon. I wouldn't say like Darko Milicic.
Yeah, I don't know. See, the thing is, I was really young for that one, so it doesn't hurt me as much. But there are some older listeners that will listen to this and be like heartbroken over that one. So it doesn't hit me as deep, but it does hit a lot of my listeners deep.
Yeah, especially when you got Carmelo behind them, Bosh, D Wade.
Yeah, definitely was tough.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm a big Marvin Bagley III fan. I always have been, man. You coming out of Duke. And people, kind of 2 points to look at, man. Is number one, I'm with you, man. I don't really look at calling people busts because there's so many factors people don't realize. The average fan doesn't realize that system is a factor, coaching is a factor. Where's the organization at? Are they a rebuilding team? Are they on the fence? Are they there's so many different factors, man. So I'm very careful to label anybody a bust. And I know to say Kwame Brown, man. Kwame Brown, look, in my opinion, man, this is a whole nother video, man, but he's an example of wrong system. I believe he would have been a different player if he didn't have Michael Jordan in DC and he had time to develop. But looking at Marvin Bagley III, man, you kind of mentioned it. He comes in, he does his job. I think that kind of looking at the trade, I think that at a certain degree, both teams kind of won because looking at Livers and looking at Marvin Bagley, look, we're hurting for rebounding. I mean, we're probably the worst rebounding team in the NBA. I mean, and if you look at, you mentioned him being the lone center. Well, it's kind of like that with Gafford, man. Right now Gafford is doing what he can, man, but he can only do so much. So I think with him playing in tandem with Daniel Gafford, I think we will be better in interior defense, which is another issue for us because rebounding and defense, man, we just struggle. We struggle so bad. So I mean, we had the Pistons looking like, man, you guys look like a championship team with ball movement, and we're just so slow in rotations, and the list goes on. So yeah, I'm very careful using bus, man. I think the biggest thing is his draft position gets him. At that draft position, you're expecting a guy to come in, be a starter, be a cornerstone, and he's just not that. But he's definitely a guy who could be a role player. He can come in, do his job, fit his role. I think he will be an asset in DC. You mentioned him being a bad contract. I mean, next year is his last year. So for us to be able to get 2 second-round picks, I think it was a big move for us, man, because it's not a long-term relationship with him. I mean, next year, we have a year and a half to kind of see what we have with him. And if he doesn't pan out, then we let him walk. And if he does, you could potentially find a diamond in the rough. And the same could be said of Isaiah Livers, man. I mean, and it kind of goes into my next question. Looking at Isaiah Livers, man, as far as the Wizards' perspective, is he a long-term piece? Because I know if we extend that qualifying offer, he's a restricted free agent, and then we can retain him. So kind of look at what's going on in Washington. We're a rebuilding team. We need young talent. Would you say that he's a long-term asset for the Washington Wizards?
I wouldn't call him a long-term asset. He's older. I know he's in his 3rd year, but he's 25 years old. So I wouldn't say he's like a long-term piece. I don't think his ceiling's very high either. It's not like this is a dude that could become a star or even a starter in the NBA. I don't think he can be that. But again, like I thought his peak after his first 2 years in the NBA, I thought he could be someone like on one of these super teams that have like KD, like the Suns, for example, like a KD. If you have like 3 superstars and you just need like a fit starter that plays defense, shoots threes, and plays his role, that's a situation where he'd be a nice starter at his peak. Like I thought that would be where he would end up in the NBA. And the injury that he suffered in the right before the season started, I think has really hurt him. Through the first 2 years of his career, he shot 37.8% from deep. And he was playing behind Sadiq Bey for a lot of those minutes. So he didn't get a lot of minutes. And he has dealt with injuries going all the way back to Michigan. He had injuries. First 2 years in Detroit, he had injuries. Before this season, he had injuries. So this is an injury-prone player. But this is a dude who's a very smart basketball player, very smart team defender, constantly talks defensively for a guy who's been in the league for 3 years. He's older, but very good team defender, I think. Sneaky athletic defender as well. He's probably going to have a few chase down wild moments for the rest of the year with you guys that's going to pop. And then offensively, when he's just limited to his role of just catch and shoot threes, if it's not there, swing the pass, keep the ball moving, cut to the basket, like all that stuff, he's I thought he was great in that role. Through his first 2 years in the NBA, I thought he was great in that role. This season, I don't know if the numbers back up on his usage rate, but actually, let me just look. Yeah, I mean, not really. It looks the same, but they asked him to do a little bit more. He was taking a little bit more off the dribble shots. He was taking a little bit more pump fake, one dribble pull-ups. He was trying to get to the rim a little bit more. And then the overall situation of the Pistons, not a lot of structure going on because of how bad they were, a lot of toxicity going on with the franchise. I feel like that's just really hurt players that aren't skillfully great. Like guys like Cade Cunningham, they'll eventually figure it out because they're just good enough to, eventually rise above it and they'll at least do good. For guys like that need good players around them and need a good system and functional offense around them to really like be able to do their role, I think it hurts them the most. So I think that's why he's had such a bad year and the injury as well is why it hurt him. Do I think you guys could extend the qualifying offer for him? Maybe. I think he's a role player at best. And if he's able to get to where he was the last 2 years, I think you guys will like him because he's not going to try to do too much. He's going to play the right way. He's going to talk. He's going to play defense. And he knows who he is. So hopefully, if he can get to that, I think people will like him a lot because he's a smart player and he knows how to play the game. He can shoot. If he's going to continue to shoot, 33% from the field and then 28% from deep, it's done for with him because that's supposed to be his bread and butter. But if he can get back to where he was the first 2 years, I think that's a really good get for you guys. As a guy who can come off the bench, 7th, 8th, 9th guy off the bench and give you like 20 minutes a game. I think that's a good get.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think right now, I definitely see a guy who could be a good role player for us if he can kind of pick it up. Because right now, obviously, the emphasis as far as the Washington Wizards is Bilal Coulibaly. The new front office, that's their guy. And, we are kind of in transition to DC. Right now, we're trying to get a lot of these veteran guys off the books so we can officially start a rebuild because we haven't even officially started rebuilding yet. We're kind of still in that gray area. We have vets and young guys fighting for minutes. So after the deadline is really our time to really start to rebuild. So, yeah, I think he's a very intriguing player, man. I mean, if he comes in and does his job, I mean, we might have something. Bagley, like I said, I'm a fan of Bagley. I mean, I guess if you know what to expect from him and kind of set your expectations right when it comes to Bagley, then you're not going to be disappointed. He's a guy who's going to come in, rebound, score in the paint, show effort on defense. So I think it's definitely a win for the Wizards. So we're going to talk about the draft a little bit next. But before we do, tonight's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. It's 2024, and I know a lot of people trying to change who you are, whether it's physically, mentally, or even spiritually. So if you're trying to work on yourself mentally, I definitely recommend BetterHelp because if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge, which is key. So all you got to do is celebrate the progress you've already made just by thinking about going with BetterHelp. So visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. And that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Tonight's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is easy to use, and there's so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays, bets in a new Explore tab, make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, which is the best way to find popular parlays, and a lot more. So all you got to do is visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, the official partner of the National Football League. All right, so both our teams are rebuilding teams. We're obviously going to be top 5 in the lottery. Looking at the makeup of your roster, who if the draft was today, who do you see the Pistons would be the #1 target in the draft?
So I haven't done much draft stuff at all yet because for the majority part of the season, I told myself, if you start looking at draft stuff already, you're not going to make it through the season. You're not. It's already tough to watch them every single night. If you already start looking over to July and December, like it's done for you. You're cooked. You're not going to make it. So I've tried to avoid the draft stuff as far as possible. What I'll say about the Pistons with the draft, I think it's a good chance they trade their pick, whatever pick they end up with. I think it's possible that they trade. I know that this cap space that they've acquired, from what I've heard, and I've told my listeners this multiple times over the last week or so, from what I understand, their idea is they're not going to be able to use this cap space in free agency because they're going to use it up in trades. They're going to absorb bigger contracts and trade out. Their hope is to then trade out expiring contracts to convince teams, hey, we don't maybe not have the best assets to give you player-wise, but we can give you a few picks along with a clean cap sheet immediately this offseason to enter into the rebuild or whatever you want to do and give yourself, get off that long-term contract. So I think that's what their idea is. And with that being said, I don't think they're in a position, and I'm not saying for sure they'll trade it. I think they'll think about it, and it's a serious conversation they're going to have. But I don't think they're in a position where they want to add another 19, 18-year-old. I think Cade is in a position where he's taken that step this year, where he's good enough to lead a team. He just needs help. He needs guys around him that can play and elevate him to another level as well. So If Cade was struggling this year and the first 10 games of this year is how he played after that, then I'd say, okay, maybe you need to go a little slower. But ever since the first 10 games, Cade has been fantastic. He looks like the number 1 overall pick. He's ready. He's taking that step that people wanted to see him take. So now I don't think you can add another 19-year-old and expect them, hey, Cade's camp to be patient and to be like, hey, we're going to, we're not going to be very good next year, but be patient with these young guys. Like, they're past that point now. It's going to be year 4. This year was supposed to be the year they took a jump, and they're going to be the worst team ever, like, according to record. Like, they're battling the 73 Sixers for the worst team ever. So, like, I don't think they're in a position where they're going to – I don't think they should draft it. And I know that it's something that they're thinking about moving on from. So that's why I'd give with the draft. I think there's a very good chance that the Pistons are not picking at the top of the draft, no matter how bad their record is.
Yeah, I figured I'd ask you that, man, because I'm with you, man. I try not to look at the draft, man, because it just depresses me because we're already pretty much ready for the draft without being ready.
The season starts and then it's over. Like, for teams like the Wizards, the Pistons, the Hornets, like, the season starts and then just like that, it's over. Like, everyone else gets to enjoy it for a few months. It's just over. It's like our season might as well not even started, basically. It's like...
Right. So what was up with the Wingstop? Did the Pistons have a deal with Wingstop if they won a game or something? Because I saw some tweets about it, but I didn't know what the real deal was about it.
So Wingstop had a deal. I don't know if it was before the year that they already had it or if it like started after they won like their first game or something. I don't know. But the deal was every Piston win, you'd get 5 free wings from like a Detroit area from Wingstop, whatever. So after when they started off the year 2-1, everyone was like, "Oh yeah, great." Wingstop was, it is what it is. Then they went on like a 30-game losing streak, and it was so funny because like at the beginning of the year, Wingstop had like a picture on all the Pistons account would tweet out like Pistons win, and then have Wingstop, a logo of Wingstop on it. And each time they lost, like the Wingstop logo would get farther and farther away from the score. Like it'd start right here, and then like by lost 20, it was like in the bottom right corner, and then like lost 25 wasn't even on the screen no more. Like it was just like they were just like, completely ignoring it. So it became like a national meme that Wingstop was just like that cursed the Pistons. And then when they finally won, it was everyone felt bad for Wingstop because everyone was saying like they're about to be like. they're about to be like taxed more than they ever have that night. Once the Pistons won, everyone was going to be at Wingstop. So yeah, right. it was a funny thing going on.
Yeah, that was hilarious. But no, there's some other guys on your team too that reportedly where I thought they were going to be traded. I mean, they still possibly could be traded. I mean, James Wiseman, he's going to get more playing time, or he should now since Bagley's gone, but he still certainly could be traded. Jaden Ivey, of course, there was reports about him not being happy with his role and his situation. He didn't get on the flight or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. But how about those guys? I think the Wizards should take a look at some of those guys. I know Brandon was big on James Wiseman, but I don't think we'll really get him because we have Bagley. I mean, they still could go after him, but how available are those guys at this point?
So I think Jaden Ivey, I don't think that he's actively available. But what I think is I'm pretty sure that like a few months ago, all the Pistons core 4 was off the table no matter what. Like Cade, Jaden Ivey, Asar Thompson, Jalen Duren, they're not traded. We're not trading them. It is we're keeping them. I think now at this point, I think everyone's the only person that's safe is Cade. So I think it's a possibility that they could trade Ivy. I think it's possible they could trade Asar. I think it's possible they could trade Duren. Now, do I think it's likely? Would I put my money on it? I don't know. But I would say at this point on January 16th, they are more willing to breaking up the core 4 for another piece that will help them win closer in the future and help Cade right now. I know they're more willing to do that than they were a few months ago. I don't know if they actually will pull the trigger on something like that. My gut tells me they'll get cold feet and not do anything. So I wouldn't say Jaden Ivey's necessarily available. I think the only way they move him is if they're getting like an all-star in return. Like if they think they're getting an all-star return that can help them immediately. I think that's the only way they would move off of him. And it would have to be like I think they have a very strict market that they'd want to trade Ivy for. So I don't know if he's really available for the Wizards. As far as James Wiseman, I cooked up a deal on Fanspo like last month. And my initial trade offer was James Wiseman and a second for Danilo Gallinari. I thought that's what was going to happen. James Wiseman's younger. He's a guy that everyone seems to think has, unlimited potential. A lot of people seem to think, that if he had more minutes, he may pop or whatever, all that stuff. And I know you guys are in a position where you obviously not winning many games, or in a position where you guys can give young players some opportunities, see if anyone pops, et cetera, et cetera. So I thought Wiseman was the better option for you guys because of that. Whereas Bagley's a little bit more known. He's well into, like, he knows what his role is now. I don't think there's much expanding beyond that. It's not like he's going to hit another level. I think he's more of like, what you have in Bagley. Whereas Wiseman, I think you know what you have in Wiseman at this point. I don't think he's very good at all. He's not good defensively at all. He's very bad defensively, really bad defensively. And then offensively, he has good touch around the rim, but the thing with Bagley or Wiseman is you'll watch Wiseman and look, he's another good dude. He's a very good kid, very, a good teammate, like all that stuff. And I mean, you kind of can look at it because he barely even played in college either. Like, he hasn't played much basketball, so it makes sense, I guess. But you'll watch him sometimes offensively, and I found myself questioning, like, does he know what sport he's playing? Does he know what he's doing out there? Because he doesn't. There's a lot of times where he just doesn't know how to set a screen or which direction to set a screen, or hey, guys driving to the rim, I probably shouldn't be standing in their way asking for a post up. Those kind of things. He just doesn't have a high basketball IQ right now offensively. So he definitely has raw skill. He definitely does. 100% has a lot of raw skill to him. It's just that at a certain point, raw skill has to be acknowledged as that, just raw skill. So that's where I'm at right now with Wiseman. And I think a lot of the Pistons community is, which is why I thought maybe another team would look at him and be like, hey, if not them, maybe us. And, he has potential. He has a lot of raw skill. Maybe we can craft him into something. So I thought Wiseman was the better option for you guys, but Bagley's the better player right now. So who knows?
Oh, Brandon, you can go ahead because I know you were interested in James Wiseman.
Yeah, I mean, I was because of the fact he's kind of outlined, man. I mean, he's young. Now, I'm glad you kind of brought up the point that he really didn't have a college career. I mean, he was hurt, he didn't play much in Memphis, and he's very, very raw. But I thought that he could have been a good pickup, man, because right now we're trying to see what we got in young pieces, man. And like I said, I mean, the only guy right now that the emphasis is on as far as Wizards is Black Coulibaly. I mean, Denny got the bag, but I still think he has a very tradable contract. Corey Kispert, how does his new front office view him? Johnny Davis, he already back with a go-go, so he ain't expecting much from him. So, yeah, I mean, Jason Wiseman, yeah, I'm with you, man. When you watch him, there's times where you see the potential, and then there's times where he might as well be on the moon, man. There's times where it's like, what are you doing, man? But I think with the Wizards, see if you can work with a guy. And I think Bagley, I'm with you, man. I remain a really big Bagley guy. And I thought that we were going to acquire either Bagley or James Wiseman just to see what we had in them as a player and see if this coaching staff can coach him up, change the scenery, change of system, so many different factors. So, but yeah, I mean, that's intriguing to think, at James Wiseman. I hope he figures it out, man. But I agree with you, man. Marvin.
He's going to get the rest of the season now to try to figure out with Detroit. They made this move to make room for him to continue to get as many minutes as the backup five for the rest of the year. So, he's going to get every chance this year to capitalize on it, prove me wrong, and secure a long-term NBA contract somewhere. So, I'm rooting for him. I don't want anyone to go out the NBA and not get their money. I want everyone to get their money. I'm not pocket watching like that, but he'll get his chance. I just don't. He hasn't shown me reason to believe it's going to happen. He's a freak athlete, absolute freak athlete for his size, incredible raw skill, but that it has to become more than that at a certain point in his career. So we'll see if it happens.
Yeah, to me, Ivy, if he wants to ask out, I'd be a happy guy because I'm a big Ivy fan. He certainly had a good game the other night against the Wizards. Same thing with Alec Burks, but Wiseman. I'm not too big on Wiseman myself, but I wouldn't mind taking a flyer on him just because the upside. He's 7'1", super athletic, like you said. There still is some talent there for sure, but somebody's really got to work with him and lock in. He's got to lock in as well himself. But Bagley, yeah, Bagley. I've been a big fan of Bagley even at Duke. I understand why the Kings took him at number 2. I know compared to Luka, Trae Young, Jaren Jackson, Shea Gilgeous was drafted after him. So many guys like Miles Bridges, Mikal Bridges. So unfortunately, he's like looked at as a bust just because of all the guys drafted after him. Unfortunately, but the talent, he's super talented, and I think I think his role is to find out a center off the bench or a power forward off the bench. Just an athletic big. He's a good offensive rebounder. He takes charges. So he plays with effort out there. He doesn't shoot the three well, but the form is good. He's a lefty. I forgot that he was a lefty, and still, I'm paying attention to him. But he's really talented, man. He's a talented player. 6'10", can jump out the gym. He just reminds me kind of how Jabari Parker didn't work out with Duke too. Another second pick of the draft there. So talented, but for whatever reason, it just didn't come together. So I'm excited to see what we get in Bagley for this year and next year. I'm not expecting a world-breaking thing, but I think he can, kind of revive his career a little bit and end his career on a good note and get paid again for another team.
Yeah, I really like Bagley. I was actually, I wanted them to move. I didn't want them to sign him to the contract that he was signed to because it was an overpay. I knew they were going to eventually have to attach something to get rid of him, and sure enough, they did. But just looking at him as the player, I appreciate Bagley because, again, he's a great guy off the court. He's a great person in the community, great teammate. But also because he 100% gives all effort he possibly can. If it's something that he can't do out there, it's not because he's not trying. Like, he's going to try. You're never going to question his effort. You're never going to question his effort defensively. He's just not very good defensively. But he's going to try. He's going to give it everything he can defensively, and he's a very talented offensive player. And I have a lot of respect for players like Bagley who get drafted super high. A lot of guys can hold that status and be like, hey, I was a number 2 overall pick. I want this. I want that. I want blah, blah, blah. Bagley has reached the point in his career where he accepted what he is. He knows what he can do. He knows what he can't do. And he bought into his role, and he was, I thought, exceeding in that role. He was playing fantastic in his role. So I root for a guy like that. I think you guys are really going to like him.
Thank you, man. I like him. I mean, he's had some big games. He's had a couple double-doubles for you guys. Some big rebounding games and couple good scoring games. Brandon, do you have any other questions?
Oh, no, I'm good, man.
Yeah.
I'm definitely excited to see what Marvin Bagley and Isaiah Livers going to do on Thursday night, man. So definitely appreciate you coming on, man.
If anytime I promise you, anytime Bagley gets 25+ minutes, he's going to get a double-double. Like it's just he's almost like I compare him a little bit to Michael Beasley, to where he's literally a point per minute guy.
I can see that too.
He's going to be if he plays 10 minutes, he's going to score 10 points. He's going to score quick. And it's not going to come off high usage either. He's going to score off offensive putbacks, lob threat, dump offs. Like, it's going to be very fast how he scores. He's just very efficient. It can score instantly. So the more minutes he gets, the more numbers he puts up. The problem is just the more minutes he plays, the more his defense starts becoming noticeable and impact you on that end. So you got to balance the both. But yeah, this dude, he's a flat out scorer. He's very talented.
Yeah, I think he's going to fit well. I think Jordan Poole, pick and roll with him, Tyus Jones, Kuzma as well. I think he's going to be a good lob threat out there too.
Yeah, man, and kind of off the cuff here, man. Breaking news, man. The Raptors and the Pacers actually in talks. 3 first-rounders for Pascal Siakam, man. So the hot stove is warming up, man. But now, man, we'll go ahead and roll tonight. But hey, man, we definitely appreciate you coming on the show. Before we roll, man, is there anything you wanted to plug real fast?
Yeah, just listen to Locked On Pistons. Hit me up on Twitter at Kuka Hill. I appreciate you guys having me on. I hope Locked On Pistons listeners appreciated hearing this perspective as well. And I wish you guys, the Wizards, the best, whatever the best is, whether it's losing a lot of games to get the first pick, seeing development, or winning some games, whatever that is, I wish you guys the best.
Yeah, I definitely expect us to lose as many games as we can. So definitely
and more Wingstop.
All right, so we go ahead and roll, man. Definitely appreciate your time. Definitely check him out over at Locked On Pistons, man. Definitely really good content. Cannot recommend him enough. So definitely appreciate you guys, man, rocking with us tonight. Anyway, you get your podcast 5-star review is much appreciated on the YouTube side. Definitely like, subscribe. If you're not a member of Locked On Wizards, definitely rock with us, man. We have a lot of fun on here. And I mean, even though it's a bad year, we're gonna have fun on here. We're definitely gearing up towards the draft and free agency. So hail to the Wizards and see you guys next time, and peace.